Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here for another episode of the Nin-Cast here on June 10th of 2023, and today we are here to talk about my predictions and hopes for the upcoming Xbox Games Showcase 2023. It is happening tomorrow, and we are here to talk about it. Now, we'll get to it, but I want to try and focus on other stuff first. But just to get it out of the way, yes, we're going to talk about it. You know exactly what game I'm talking about, or games rather. But before we talk about that, because those two games, well, one more so than the other, but those two games would have been by far the highlight for me if they weren't spoiled for all of us. But again, we'll get to that when we get to it. But I want to talk about everything else, and then we'll talk about those two games. But just to make it clear, we're going to talk about them, believe me. We cannot do a video about this. I mean, I would have brought these games up regardless before everything went down. But of course, now that we know about it, of course I can't not talk about it. It's definitely going to be one of the highlights of the show, even if the surprise was kind of ruined for us. So thanks, social media guy on Instagram. But again, we'll save that discussion for later. But let's go ahead and talk about kind of the prelude going into this, because that isn't that. Again, we'll talk about those games later. We'll talk about them later, I promise. But let's just kind of talk about the Xbox Showcase in general and kind of the prelude and the lead-up. So, the Xbox Game Showcase is more or less, kind of by default, the big one for the summer. Obviously, PlayStation, Sony, they had an event at the end of May, which got a pretty lukewarm reception, and probably, I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean, it wasn't great. It was definitely a weaker showcase than the last couple they've had. And when I say showcase, by the way, I am not talking about the state of plays. I'm talking about exclusively the big balls E3 scale. You know, this is the PlayStation Showcase. I'm talking about the PlayStation Showcase when I say one of the weaker ones, okay? So if we're talking, comparing it to like the June 2020 or September 2020 or September 20, again, the PlayStation Showcase, not State of Play, I will agree that the recent PlayStation Showcase was not as good as the last couple. I do agree on that. But I don't think it was an outright failure, catastrophe, it's all over, like a lot of people online seem to think it is, because we got good stuff in that presentation. Like, for example, the entire, I mean, I know this is kind of cheating a little bit, but for, like, all the Spider-Man stuff was cool, for example. And there were a couple other things, admittedly, I can't remember off the top of my head, that were in that presentation that were kind of cool. And it's like, yeah, it wasn't great, and there definitely was not enough first-party stuff. And the first-party stuff they did have was, you know, the CG trailer, and they were the live service games anyway, so no one really cared in the first place. But there's stuff they could have showed that they should have showed. They should have showed us factions, for example. That's one that made all the sense in the world to be there. It wasn't there. Why it wasn't there, I don't know. Also, weird how they saved the Spider-Man 2 release date and box art for Summer Games Fest instead of just having it in the presentation to begin with. That was kind of weird, but whatever. Point is, while I don't think the PlayStation Showcase was a catastrophe, it is the weakest PlayStation Showcase we've had so far. I will agree with that 100%. But because of that, because a lot of people were not happy with that showcase, the expectations, on top of the fact that, of course, Microsoft of the last few months has not exactly been in the best position with all the stuff with Redfall and the continuing kind of behind-the-scenes drama with some of their studios like 343, and, of course, the Activision deal is still trucking along and hasn't been finalized yet, but, you know, we'll see. You know, basically, Xbox and Microsoft, they need a win right now. They need a win that'll show people that, hey, we're good, we got good stuff coming, we promise, we really do. And the thing is, they do. They absolutely have games to show. That's the thing that's been so kind of frustrating. about Microsoft for the last year or so is that it's not like they don't have games to show. They do. We're going to talk about all of them in a minute here, but they have like 7 or 8 upcoming games that we have known about for years that they have barely shown us anything of. They have the games, some big games even. They just have to show it, and they have to hit in the way that will, they have to hit. The question is, will they do that? Well, I sure as hell hope they do, but enough with all this preamble. You get the idea. Basically, there's a lot riding on this presentation, not only for Microsoft, but just kind of the industry in general right now, or at least the console side of things. Again, with how a lot of people weren't really all that thrilled with the PlayStation presentation, and of course, there's unfortunately not going to be a Nintendo presentation this year, but that doesn't surprise me because, what the hell are they going to show? Like, it's 2016 all over again, where everything they've shown is basically it for the current system, and we just have to wait until the Switch 2 gets announced before they start showing us big things again. So, outside of Pikmin 4 and, more Splatoon and Mario Kart DLC, outside of stuff like that, there's really nothing else they can really show right now that justifies, an E3 level presentation of some kind. Heck, even just a regular Direct, honestly, is kind of just I don't know. I don't think there's that much left they're really going to have to show outside of just updates and stuff like that. Because all of the big stuff, like a new 3D Mario, for example, people have been wanting to see forever, that's not coming until the Switch 2. Mario Kart 9, that's not happening until the Switch 2. Even though it's a little early, I think, and people aren't dying for it, but I'll just throw it out there. Like new Smash, which we all know is going to happen eventually, they're obviously not going to even give a whiff of that until... See, that's the problem right now. It's 2016 all over again, where all the big stuff they have in the pipeline is for the next system. So, of course, they're not going to have a Direct this year for E3, because there's nothing for them to show. They just put out Tears of the Kingdom. That's pretty much their last big game for the system. So, yeah, but I definitely, that's definitely something we'll have to talk about another time. Again, and this is about the Microsoft event, not Nintendo, but basically for reasons that I think make complete sense. Normally, I really don't like it when they skip E3. I didn't like it when they skipped E3 last year and gave us that partner showcase, which granted gave us the Persona ports on Switch or whatever, although I didn't really care about that too much personally because I was never all that invested in the Persona on Switch crusade that so many people were. I was just kind of like, if they come to the Switch, cool. If they don't, whatever. But that was a highlight. I'll give them that. But, and of course, last year, and we'll get to this when we talk about it. But of course, last year at the Xbox showcase, that's when we got the announcement of Persona 3, 4, and 5 coming to everything under the sun. But again, we'll talk about Persona later on. But enough. Okay, I'm just rambling here. Let's talk about the actual darn showcase. You get the idea. People were underwhelmed with the Sony presentation, and Nintendo doesn't have a Direct this year. And there's not, and we got Summer Games Fest, and if you watched my reaction to it, honestly, and I genuinely mean this, that was the best Summer Games Fest we have had so far. I know that is not a high bar. I'm not saying it was amazing, but they had enough stuff that I'd give it a solid C+. They had enough stuff there that I could say that was a pretty decent showing. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't the best thing ever. But they had enough big stuff there that I'd be like, you know what? C+. Maybe if I'm being a little generous, especially thanks to stuff like FF7, Rebirth, maybe I'd even go as far as to give it a very light B-, but C+, Not amazing, but definitely the best Summer Games Fest we've had so far. And also that tease with the whole, speaking of Final Fantasy, and then they had the transition of, the Taco Bell, whatever. That was genuinely, unironically, even though there was obviously other good stuff in that presentation, that was the best part. Everyone agrees on that. Seemingly, from what I've seen, everyone liked that. Everyone liked that. You gotta give Jeff Keighley this. Say what you will about him, about how he tends to kind of overhype, his presentations, whether it's the Game Awards or the Summer Games Fest, a lot of the time, which is why a lot of people tend to come away from those presentations, kind of underwhelmed a lot of the time. I think this one did a decent job of, delivering what people wanted, but that's a whole other conversation. But that, you gotta give him that. And of course he knew what he was doing, and of course the audience was all, oh, when he was transiting. Like, he knew what he was doing, and I wasn't worried for a second, because literally right before that, they showed Ever Crisis, which I was not expecting them to show, by the way, which has a release date of some kind-ish. So that's cool, because that game has been in development for a while. And that's one of the very few mobile games that people actually want to play, because it actually looks good. So I'm hoping it doesn't get trapped on mobile and they'll actually put it on Steam or the Switch or anything. Just put it on something. It's not a phone, for God's sakes. But this is not about that. But anyway, of course they're going to show FF7. Especially when at the very beginning he was all like, we have a really big game at the end. It's like, oh, it's obviously FF7. So I wasn't worried about it. But that tease was really good. Hats off to you, Jeff. I give you that. That was genuinely good. But oh my god, we are 10 minutes in and we haven't even talked about the presentation yet. Okay, let's just get it straight into this. No more side tangents. Let's get right into this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the easy stuff that's pretty obviously going to be here, but isn't going to be given any, like, serious weight. It's just, the general, like, yeah, of course it's going to be here. So you're going to have your obligatory, multiplayer / live service updates. So you're going to see, Halo Infinite, the new, like, Season 4 of Halo Infinite. You're going to see more of that. I believe Sea of Thieves is still getting updates, so you'll probably see some of that. I know a new ESO update just came out recently. ESO Necrom, I believe is what it's called. Like a new expansion or whatever. But, ESO is kind of a staple, at least back when Bethesda was its own company and they had their own E3 presentations. It was kind of always a staple, and I believe ESO has been a part of every Microsoft presentation since they were bought out. So ESO, at least in a small, probably nothing big because the new expansion just came out or whatever, but it'll probably be at least mentioned really quickly. Also, I think Fallout 76 is still getting updates, so I'll probably get a quick mention. And probably the biggest, most notable one that'll get mentioned is Redfall. Now, of course, Redfall came out not too long ago, and yeah, we all know how that went. It flopped pretty badly. But one thing that was promised was a 60 FPS patch. Now, I don't think the game has received any, outside of like bug fixes and stuff like that, I don't think it's received any like major content updates since it came out, I believe last month? Was it last month? Or was it late April? I don't know, it was like a month or so ago, whatever. You get the idea. It was not that old. It's a fairly new game still. It's like at least a month and a half old or something. To my knowledge, there has not been any major content release for the game yet. However, I think alongside what will probably be the first big content update that they'll probably announce at the showcase, they'll probably also be like, hey, the 60 FPS update that we promised earlier is coming in this update. Or at least that's what I'd hope. It's a pretty bad look on them if the first major update for the game, because again, as far as I'm aware of, there hasn't been any major updates for the game that have like added new, season 1, season or whatever. To my knowledge, there has not been any big content updates to the game since it's come out. It's just been like bug fixes and stuff to address all the performance issues the game had, like all the other PC ports this year. But that's a whole other conversation. But I'd imagine that whenever they inevitably talk about a Redfall update or DLC or whatever, they're going to have to be like, oh yeah, here's the 60 FPS patch. It'd be pretty awkward if the first big update for the game didn't come with it, especially after it was like something that should have been there in the first place. But again, people have talked about that to death, but whatever. So Redfall will probably get a quick shout out and they'll be like, oh yeah, here's the first new big update and also the 60 FPS patch. Hopefully. I'm not classifying this in the same category because I don't think it's live service, and also it's kind of its own thing because of the franchise it is. But Minecraft Legends came out a few months ago, and of course Minecraft is owned by Microsoft, and they have shown Minecraft stuff. Actually, I believe Minecraft Legends was announced at last year's Xbox Game Showcase this time last year. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, Minecraft Legends came out a few months ago. They'll probably announce some update or DLC for it. It'll again be a quick mention, nothing that lasts that long, but I'm guessing they'll throw that in there. Maybe they'll save that for like because of course Mojang, however you want to pronounce it, I'm just gonna say Mojang. Mojang, of course, holds their own Minecraft events every year or so. So maybe they'd save it for that, or maybe they'll just announce it on Twitter. I don't know, but I could see there's being something here, maybe not, whether it's an update, DLC, whatever, but but there's no way that game isn't going to get some kind of post-launch support, because Minecraft Dungeons, which came out a few years ago, got a bunch of DLC packs and is still getting updates even. Now granted, you might say, well, why wouldn't it? Because Minecraft, the actual game, gets it. Yeah, but Minecraft, the actual game, is different than a spin-off, but whatever. Point is, Minecraft Legends will probably be here for an update or something. Now, this is something that I don't think is actually going to be here, but I think would be a really cool idea, and something that I think would go over very well as one of the highlights of the show for people. They should, I don't think it's going to be here, but they should announce some big update, or maybe even a straight up DLC expansion for Hi-Fi Rush. Now, like I said at the beginning, Microsoft right now, this year, has not been in a great spot when it comes to Xbox and gaming. However, Hi-Fi Rush is probably their biggest diamond that they have right now. That was the one game that when it was announced and it was like, hey, this cool, made by a Japanese developer, and it's this really cool game with a cool art style, kind of a throwback to, some of the games you might have seen in the PS2 or Wii era. I know a lot of people compared it to. Whatever, it was just a cool game. It's a good game. I haven't finished it because I've been distracted playing other things. Of course, right now I'm still working my way through Tears of the Kingdom. But when the game first came out, I played some of Hi-Fi Rush, and it's a good game. It's really great art style. It goes without saying. I'm definitely gonna work on that game some more at some point. Maybe I'll even stream it. We'll see. But yeah. But Hi-Fi Rush was a game that came out and everyone was like, this is amazing. Everyone agreed that Hi-Fi Rush was amazing. It's a great game. If you haven't played it, go check it out. It's on Game Pass, obviously. And also, I think it's $20-$30 on Steam. I don't know. It's actually fairly cheap. It's not full price, which is also something that helps it. But yeah, great game. Definitely, Microsoft's big kind of highlight right now in 2023 in terms of their lineup is hey, Hi-Fi Rush, that game was great. So announcing an expansion of some kind or a big update for it, I think would definitely go over well, and that'd be a great idea, I think, just in general, right? Because obviously the game was received well. In terms of sales, see, here's the thing. Microsoft doesn't really talk about game sales anymore, because ever since they've shifted their focus towards Game Pass, they've stopped talking about game sales and now just player counts. Hey, Halo Infinite had the biggest launch. We had 100, it wasn't 100 million, but we had 100 million players, whatever. It's obviously nowhere near that amount, but you get what I'm saying, right? That's their bar now. It's not about the sales, it's about how many active users they can get. More so for the live service games, but of course Hi-Fi Rush is not a live service game at all. It's a standard, traditional, single-player game. So, the player thing, but I remember when Microsoft was talking about how well Hi-Fi Rush did, I think they were talking more so about, again, the player count. We had this many active players. However, I did hear that the game did sell well. It wasn't, 10 million units or anything, but it sold decently, even though it was on Game Pass. So that's good. I think especially on Steam it sold well. But yeah, so the game obviously sold well enough, and it was received critically. It was critically acclaimed across the board. So doing a big update or DLC for Hi-Fi Rush is just, it seems like such an obvious move, such an obvious PR win too. That's something that people can come out of the presentation and be like, hey, new stuff for Hi-Fi Rush coming. Everyone can agree on that being a good thing. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be here. Honestly, I think Hi-Fi Rush is kind of a one and done. I think that was kind of it. We might get a sequel down the line, but in terms of the game that exists, I think that's kind of it. Again, maybe we'll get a surprise update at the showcase, but because they haven't really updated the game since then. I know that on Prime Gaming, aka Twitch Prime, I still kind of call it Twitch Prime, even though it hasn't been called that in forever, but whatever. On Prime Gaming, as well as if you have Game Pass Ultimate and you go to the perks tab, you can actually get some Hi-Fi Rush skins that they just put out recently, apparently. So that, to my knowledge, that's pretty much all they've really done, is just that one giveaway thing on like Prime Gaming or whatever. That's pretty much it. They haven't done any like big updates. They've added new modes or stuff like that or anything. Obviously no story DLC, nothing of that, nothing like that. The game just kind of came out and that was it. Which I know a lot of people probably appreciate, obviously, in this age of, you know, there always being DLCs and updates and da-da-da-da-da. I think there are a lot of people out there that are just happy to have a traditional game that comes out and it's done and that's it and there's nothing after it. But again, I think if we got a big, like, update or expansion, I think that would go over well. But anyways, yeah, I don't think that's going to be here. I think Hi-Fi Rush is kind of done and they're already moving on to their next project. But if we got Hi-Fi Rush DLC, I think that would go over well. Okay, now moving on. Forza Motorsport is, of course, coming out soon. I believe the release date actually leaked recently. Another Xbox Showcase leak. That's wonderful. I believe it's coming out in October. Obviously, that's going to get shown off. And we'll get the release date official. That's kind of all I really have to say in regards to that, honestly. Just, yeah, like it's Forza Motorsport. Of course, it's going to be here. We've known about it for about a year or so at this point. We've known about it for a while. It's, you know, one of their big games this year. So obviously, we're going to see it. We're going to release date, and that'll pretty much be it. Personally, this is not going to be here because I think the game is done at this point. But I would really like to see like a big new update for Forza Horizon 5 come out, but I don't think that's going to happen because I think the game, in terms of big updates, is pretty much done at this point because, of course, we had the Rally expansion come out a few months ago, and that was kind of the last, you know, big part of like kind of the pass and everything. So it's kind of, and we're still getting cars and like stuff like that, and they're still updating the game with like new cars and adding new events here and there, and they're still updating it. But it's kind of obvious that the big, you know, we've had the 2 expansions. You know, we got the Hot Wheels DLC and we got Rally expansion. So unless they put out another pass, we're not gonna get another expansion. I'd like another expansion, but I think that's pretty much it for the game, which, you know, it's fair enough. I mean, I haven't played the game as much recently because I've kind of done everything I can really do in the game, but obviously I would not be saying no to another expansion if they wanted to suddenly drop one of those. But I think that Forza Horizon 5, at least in terms of like really big stuff like expansions, is pretty much done at this point. They're just going to be continuing on with the standard, like, you know, adding in new cars, adding in new events, stuff like that, but not adding in like a big expansion, which, you know, it's fine. The game's a year and a half old, you know, they've done everything they really need to do. It's just, I think it would be cool if we got another one. But I think they're going to focus on Forza Motorsport for sure. Even if Forza Horizon 5 gets a really quick shout out as like a, hey, maybe they'll announce Forza Horizon 5 Complete Edition that has all the stuff included or whatever, you know, or something like that. Because I think they've done that for previous Forza games at some point. So maybe they'll announce that, but I'm not expecting anything big out of Forza Horizon 5. I think that game has pretty much run its course in terms of big new releases, and they're going to focus exclusively on Forza Motorsport, as you'd expect. Okay, I got a bit of a curveball. Something I willing to bet most people are not going to throw in here. Actually, no. Before we do that, let's get something else out of the way. Hollow Knight Silk Song. This is a game that I personally don't have any interest in, but a lot of people do. And people have been chomping at the bit. Every single time there's a direct or an indie world, people are foaming at the mouth for this darn game. And then all of a sudden, last year at the Xbox Showcase, we got our first trailer in like forever. Which is the main reason I'm putting it here. Is because they showed it last year, and we know it's coming to Game Pass, and maybe they want to market that again, so maybe we'll get another trailer here. And we'll get like a proper actual release date, because to my knowledge, there is no release date for that game yet. I could be wrong though. I haven't really been following that game, but to my knowledge, there has not been any big news on that game since last year's trailer at the Xbox Showcase. So seeing it again here wouldn't surprise me. Not saying it's guaranteed, but like I'd put a decent, at least I'd say 50-50 on that at least. Okay, moving on to the unexpected-ish thing that might be here. A few months ago, at one of like the Dragon Ball gaming events that like Bandai Namco held, they announced the highly anticipated Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 4. It's not officially called 4, but everyone else is calling it 4 because what else is it going to be? Even if they don't call it that, and they just call it like Dragon Ball Super Tenkaichi. I mean, they're probably gonna call it Dragon Ball Super Budokai Tenkaichi 4, kind of like how the Naruto games, like when they transitioned to Shippuden, they kept the numbering system. They just they just added the Shippuden part in it because it's still the same series. So we had Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1, 2, and 3, or sorry, Budokai Tenkaichi. They're two different series. There's the Budokai series, then there's the Budokai Tenkaichi series, and then there's the Tenkaichi Budokai series as well, I think. So many different darn series. Whatever. There was Z 1, 2, and 3, and then this will be Super 4, is what I'm guessing they're going to call it. But anyways, I'm getting off track. Point is, we have had a history of Dragon Ball games being announced and shown off at Xbox presentations. In 2017, Dragon Ball FighterZ was announced at the Xbox Showcase. In 2019, I think, we got the reveal of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Now, granted, we already knew about the game. It was like Dragon Ball Z Project, or Dragon Ball Project Z, or whatever was the code name, but it was officially revealed at the Xbox Showcase in 2019, I believe. And then, I believe in... There's one other one I'm forgetting off the top of my head. There's another Dragon Ball game I think they announced on stage as well. But, there's a history of Dragon Ball stuff, and also just kind of like Bandai Namco anime stuff being announced. Like, for example, Jump Force. Say what you will about Jump Force, but that was announced at an Xbox presentation. Also, I believe One Piece Odyssey was also announced at an Xbox showcase. I could be wrong about that. And also I think another One Piece game, I don't know. There's a history of that kind of stuff being announced at an Xbox show, including Dragon Ball, so I really would not be that surprised at all if we got our first big look, like our first proper trailer of the new Tenkaichi at the event, because there is precedent for it. However, we did just get that new Sandland game announced at Summer Games Fest, which is clearly being done as a tie-in to the new anime that's coming out, but so that might conflict things a little bit because we're talking about another Akira Toriyama property, one that's much less known, but still, it probably doesn't mean anything really. They could show whatever they want, obviously, but I don't know. If it wasn't for Sandland, I'd probably be more confident. But I almost wonder if Bandai Namco wants the attention taken off of Sandland in favor of Tenkaichi 4. I don't know, but even though I know they're two different games, but again, similar-ish. Well, the only thing they really have in common is they're Toriyama, obviously, but in terms of audience, they're probably different. Whatever. You get the point. I'm dragging this part out. Tenkaichi 4, I'm not gonna, bet money on it, but again, like Hollow Knight, 50-50? There's precedent. We've had Dragon Ball games shown off at Xbox events before. I could see it. Not betting money on it, but I could totally see it. And now, let's get to basically all of the big first-party stuff that we know nothing about, but we know is coming. We're talking Fable. We're talking Everwild. We're talking Hellblade 2, that game that was announced all the way back at the Game Awards 2019 when they first announced the Series X, and we have not seen jack squat about. Okay, that's actually, hold on, let me take that back a little bit. That is not entirely true. We have seen, I think we got at least one trailer since then, like a little tiny Unreal Engine 5 snippet a few months ago, but we have seen basically none of that game in the 3 or 4 years since it was announced. And that's and that was supposed to be one of the headline titles for the Series X, but we have seen barely anything of it since it was announced. We also have Avowed from Obsidian. We have, of course, Perfect Dark was announced a while ago from the Initiative and Crystal Dynamics. I know there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on with that. But there's State of Decay 3, Outer Worlds 2. There's that Indiana. This isn't Microsoft necessarily, but there's that Indiana Jones game that was announced a year or two ago. That's probably a little too soon for them to really show anything, but I could see them doing it because, of course, we have the new movie coming out, so maybe they want to have a synergy with that. I mean, obviously, the game's not based off the movie. It's going to be its own thing, but, hey, we got the new Indiana Jones movie coming out, so why not show off the new Indiana Jones game from our AAA studio, But I don't think they're going to show that, honestly. I think they're going to wait at least a year or two before showing it because they think they want to keep the focus on Starfield, and we'll talk about Starfield in a bit. But yeah, also there's also that game Contraband from Avalanche, the guys that made Just Cause. There's a lot of like I said earlier at the beginning. Microsoft has a lot of games they could show. It's just, will they show it? Well, let's go in order. Fable. This is all but guaranteed to be here, because on Twitter they have been teasing with their little countdowns. They have been teasing at least something Fable. Now, it could be a remaster or a collection or something, but I mean, come on. Like, it's obviously going to be the game, which is another reason why they probably wouldn't show Forza Horizon 5 anything aside from the game pretty much being done at this point in terms of major content, but also because Playground is hard at work on Fable right now. They don't have time to add more stuff to Forza 5, especially when they probably have some guys out, at least like maybe like a B team working on like preliminary stuff for Forza Horizon 6 or something, but it's a whole other conversation. But yeah, Fable, again, another like, what was supposed to be one of like kind of the tentpole titles of the Series X when it was first announced. And we haven't seen anything about it outside of the initial CG trailer from 2020, and it's all but guaranteed to be here, because again, it's literally been teased on Twitter, basically. They haven't straight up said it, obviously, but like, come on, it's gonna be here. And I'm gonna guess we'll get a release window, but not a specific date. Like, here, my expectation is just 2024. That is all I'm expecting. It's just a generic 2024. Next up, Everwild. Now, I think a lot of people have forgotten about this game because it wasn't announced at a major Xbox event. It was announced at like this XO19, like kind of on the side. No one really cared or paid attention to it event. I do remember it, but it wasn't like a stream or anything, I don't think. I think it was just kind of this like, it was just like this kind of just separate weird event that they did like once or whatever. I don't know. But This is Rare's next big game after Sea of Thieves. Now, of course, Sea of Thieves has been around. Sea of Thieves has been around for a while at this point. I mean, Sea of Thieves was announced when, like 2015? Yeah, it was announced in 2015, because I remember, because that's the showcase when they announced Rare Replay, and then right afterwards they were like, here's Rare's legacy, and here's Rare's, future, and then they showed Sea of Thieves, and then it didn't come out until 2018. It didn't become like good until like a few years later, but I haven't played it myself. But yeah, I heard Sea of Thieves, launched in a kind of a rough state. But nowadays, it's got a fan base. Maybe not the traditional Rare fan base that people have been clamoring, to see them do more with. But there is a audience. Sea of Thieves has been successful, and I mentioned earlier that they're probably going to show something for it here. I believe last year we got the announcement of like Sea of Thieves, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Was that last year or was that the year before? That might have been 2021. I don't know, either way. But yeah, so Everwild is supposed to be their big new game. It was announced at this random Xbox event that wasn't one of the major ones, like in 2019, and we haven't heard anything about it since. We haven't seen anything about it since. Is it gonna be here? I want to say yes because it's been so long, but you could say that for all these franchises. You could say this for Fable, you could say this for Hellblade, you could say this for Avowed, like all these games that were announced in like 2019, 2020 that we haven't seen anything of. You could say this for all of them. But I mean, I don't know. But I'd imagine Everwild is one of their smaller titles in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's not going to be on the scale of a Hellblade or an Avowed or something like that. It's gonna be one of their smaller titles, I'd imagine. So I don't know. Here's what I will say. If we do see it, it will probably once again, like Fable, be a release window. And if it is a release window, then obviously it's going to be 2024. Because at this point, if it was 2023, it would just be like, oh, it's coming out October 12th or whatever. But we'll see. Then we have Hellblade. Now, as I said earlier, Hellblade was supposed to be this was like the first game announced for the system, basically. And we have barely seen anything on it. Now is the time. Of all the games that Microsoft has to show, this is the one that's like, it is time to show this. It has been long enough. You got no excuse. You gotta show us something for God's sakes, and give us some kind of a release date of some kind. Like, come on, the game's been in development for how long now? I mean, I'm not expecting it to launch this year. It's probably going to be 2024, but just say something. Something. There is another Ninja Theory game in development that they could also show, but this is clearly the one that's like the big one, so like, I don't know. So, Hellblade 2, hopefully it's here. It should be here. It's supposed to be one of their tentpole releases. But we'll see. But yeah, Hellblade 2. Avowed. Now, Avowed is a game that I think people have kind of also forgotten about. Because the big selling point of Avowed when it was first announced was, hey, look, Microsoft has their own Elder Scrolls. Then they bought Elder Scrolls. And now it's kind of made the entire purpose. I know it's not the same thing, but I remember when Avowed was first announced in 2020, people were talking about it as like, hey, look, Microsoft has their own Elder Scrolls. But now they own Elder Scrolls, so it kind of doesn't mean as much as it would have otherwise. But this is, I know a game that people are looking forward to. It's from Obsidian. You know, they got a track record. You know, probably Obsidian's most famous game off the top of my head is probably they've done several acclaimed games. They did South Park: Stick of Truth. They of course did Fallout New Vegas, which is probably their most popular title, I'd imagine. And no, we're not going to get New Vegas 2 right now. I know there's been rumors and talks, and the guys at Obsidian are down for it, but of course now that Bethesda's in the picture, you know, they can all do whatever they want, because of course Obsidian was bought by Microsoft years before they bought Bethesda, but now that they're all, you know, one big family, you know, they can do whatever they want. But that's not going to happen now. Obsidian's got too much on their plate. There's another game they have in development as well that could be here that we'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, Avowed though, like, it was supposed to be kind of Microsoft's Xbox's like Elder Scrolls, or at least that's the impression I got. Obviously, we only had one trailer, but that's what I remember people talking about, was this is their Elder Scrolls. But they have Elder Scrolls now. They bought Elder Scrolls. So it's kind of like, I mean, obviously, I'm sure it'll still be a neat game and everything. And I'm sure once we get to see more of it, people will definitely, I'm sure it'll be a good game. It's Obsidian, but it's kind of all any energy it had kind of died when Microsoft bought Bethesda. But yeah, Avowed though, again, we CG trailer from 2020. Haven't heard anything about it since. I think if we see an Obsidian game, because there's 2 Obsidian games they could show. Of the 2, this is the one I'd imagine they would show first, because it was the one that was announced first. But we'll get to the other one when we get to it. Next up is Gears of War. Now, of course, Gears of War is famously one of the 3 series. Like, what's been the longest running? Like, what's one of the longest running memes when it comes to Xbox? Halo, Forza, Gears. Those are the only 3 franchises that exist. They're not, but they're the 3 most prominent, the 3 that most people know about. Halo, Forza, and Gears. We talked about Halo. They're gonna probably show Season 4. We talked that they're gonna probably show Forza, and they're gonna have Forza Motorsport, of course, which leaves us with Gears. Now, Gears 5 came out in 2019. The game, to my knowledge, has stopped receiving major updates. It's basically on life support mode now. And we had Gears Tactics a few years ago, and there hasn't really been anything since then. Obviously, they're working on something, probably Gears 6, and it's been long enough, 2019 to 2023. Yeah, they could probably show it here. But another thing that they could show as well is there has been rumors. I remember last year there were rumors of a Gears collection. Basically, think the MCC, but for Gears of War. I don't think that's literally what the rumor was, but that was kind of the way I think a lot of people interpreted it. Was it's going to be like, it's not going to literally just be remasters of the first 3 games. It's going to literally be the MCC, but for Gears of War, where they're all tied together and have the same UI, and you can just go between the games however you want. Which, that'd be cool. Like a kind of an MCC styled Gears of War. That'd be kind of cool. Gears collection of some kind. The Marcus Phoenix collection. The MFC? The MFC. Or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, that's something I know was rumored a little while ago. Granted, that's probably not something that the Coalition is directly involved in. That's probably going to be one of the side studios. And then the Coalition is, of course, going to be supervising. And then, of course, they're going to be working full on with Gears 6. But yeah, either one of those things, like, we're going to get something at the show for Gears. It's been long enough since Gears 5, but there's got to be something. So, yeah, there's that. Contraband. This was announced, I think, at the last showcase as well in 2022. It's just some game from Avalanche that they're publishing. again, when I say there's two different Avalanches. There's Avalanche, the guys that make Just Cause, which is the more famous Avalanche and the one that most people are referring to when they say Avalanche. And then there's the newer Avalanche. Well, they're not really new, but newer in the public eye Avalanche that used to make Disney Infinity, that got bought by Warner Bros. And they're the guys that made Hogwarts Legacy. And yeah, so, but when I'm talking about Avalanche, I'm talking about Just Cause Avalanche, aka Avalanche Studios. I believe there are two different names to the different Avalanches. I believe the Avalanche that made Just Cause is Avalanche. So no, sorry, Avalanche Games. Avalanche Games is the Just Cause guys, and I believe Avalanche Studios is the guys that made Hogwarts Legacy. I don't know. They're two different developers. Just want to make that clear. But yeah, Contraband. We don't know anything about it. I think it's multiplayer, but I could be wrong. Avalanche really hasn't done multiplayer. I mean, not that I really know of. Again, I mostly know them for Just Cause, as well as that that Mad Max game from a while ago. Those are of course all single player. There have been multiplayer mods and stuff, but there hasn't been like a multiplayer specific thing. But again, we'll see. Perfect Dark, of course, resurrecting a classic Rare property. It's not being made by Rare. It's being made by, similar to Killer Instinct. It's not being made by Rare. Also, no Killer Instinct. I know there's a lot of people that want to see Killer Instinct come back, especially a certain Maximilian dude. We're probably not going to get that here, though, unfortunately. Yeah, Perfect Dark though is being made by The Initiative, which is a studio that was made to make, quote, Quad A. That feels so weird to say Quad A. To make Quad A games, as in 4-star games or something like that. I forget. It was like, you have you have your indie games, then you have your AA games, then you have your AAA games, and then they were going to be like the Quad A game, or at least that's how they like marketed themselves when they first started. And their one project has been this game, and we have seen nothing about it. Although, granted, it was one of the more, I think this was 2021 is when it was announced. This is one of the more, this isn't a 2019, 2020 era announcement. This is from later on, I believe. But still. But yeah, this is a game also supposed to be worked on by Crystal Dynamics, the guys that make Tomb Raider and stuff like that. And also worked on, infamously worked on the Avengers game, but we're not going to talk about that. Who are now, of course, over at Embracer after they bought Crystal Dynamics, as well as the majority of Square Enix's non-Japanese output, with the exception of actually Avalanche. Avalanche is still owned by Square Enix, and therefore they still own Just Cause. But Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, anything under the Crystal Dynamics or Eidos Montreal or any of that stuff, all that stuff is now at Embracer. They now own the rights to that. There's a deal with Amazon or something to publish the next couple of Tomb Raiders, but again, that's a whole other conversation for another day. Actually, I could throw that in here. We have that new Tomb Raider was announced a while ago. Maybe we'll see it. It's probably a bit too early for us to see it here, but you never know. But anyway, Perfect Dark though, again, resurrecting not the most classic of classic Rare properties. Obviously, when people think classic Rare, they think Banjo, GoldenEye, Conquer, stuff like that. Heck, even some of the newer stuff like Viva Pinata that people might even throw in that pile. But that's what people think of when they think of, and of course all the old Donkey Kong games and stuff, even though that wasn't owned by them, obviously. But Perfect Dark is from the N64 era. It definitely has a fan base, and it is a reboot that was announced like in 2021, I think, and we haven't seen anything about it since. And there's been a lot of shuffling behind the scenes at the Initiative in regards to this project, so a lot of people are kind of worried about how that's going to turn out. But yeah, I mean, will we see it though? I think if we do see Perfect Dark, it's going to be a CG trailer. I don't think there's going to be any gameplay. That's just my guess though. State of Decay 3, don't have much to say about this. It was announced, I think this was a 2020 game. I believe when they announced this, it was in 2020, at that 2020 event. And they said back then, 2023. Are they still going to hit that release date? Has it been delayed? I don't think it's been delayed. I could be wrong because they haven't talked about the game since then. But yeah, State of Decay 3, if it is still coming out this year, then it'll obviously be here. We'll get a release date for it. We'll get a new trailer, all that good stuff. Because last time we just got, like, I don't know if it was a CG trailer, but we didn't really get to see any gameplay last time. But yeah, State of Decay 3, that's a decent chance of being here. The Outer Worlds 2. This is the other game by Obsidian that's in development. This was announced after Avowed, I believe in 2021, and we do not know anything about it other than it's in development. It's probably not going to get shown off just yet, because they're probably, if they are going to show something from Obsidian, it's going to be Avowed, because that was announced earlier, and that one probably has more anticipation going for it. The Outer Worlds had its fans, I know, but it's not really but I feel like Avowed probably has more interest going for it than Outer Worlds 2. But yeah, but hey, we'll see. I don't think it's going to be here. I think they're going to wait on that another year. But we'll see. Or maybe they'll show it in like a developer direct down the line or something like that if they keep those going. But yeah. Indiana Jones. So this is the game I was going to talk about earlier, but I was like, no, we'll save that for later. Indiana Jones is the next big game to come from Bethesda Game Studios. As in Bethesda, as in Todd Howard. The main part of Bethesda. So, not id, not Machine Games, not any of those guys, not Tango Gameworks, like proper Bethesda Game Studios. The guys that make, of course, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and of course the upcoming Starfield that we will be talking about in a minute. Indiana Jones. Like I said earlier, they have the new game coming out. So they have the new movie coming out. So if they were going to show Indiana Jones, this would be a good, synergistic, time to do it. But I think that game was only announced last year. Could be wrong about that. Maybe 2 years ago. But I think that game is clearly in early development. I mean, for context, Starfield was announced in 2018 at what I think was Bethesda's last E3 conference. I could be wrong. They might have had one more after that. In 2019, I could be wrong. But I feel like 2018 was their last conference, but I could be wrong. Anyways, that was also the same conference they announced Elder Scrolls 6 with that, like, overshot of the mountains or whatever, which we're not gonna see here. Not that anyone's expecting that at all, but like that's clearly not gonna be here. We're still at least a year or two away from that being shown. But anyways, Indiana Jones, I don't think is going to be here. It's Bethesda's next big game after Starfield, but that's exactly why they're not going to show it. Aside from the fact that they probably just don't have anything to show, they're focusing on Starfield. That's not only Bethesda's big game, that's Microsoft's big game right now. That is their tentpole title right now for the holiday season. That is their big, this is the reason you buy an Xbox or buy Game Pass. That's their game. That's the game, and we'll talk about it in a sec. But because of that, I don't think we're going to see anything from Indiana Jones, not even a peep. I don't think it's going to even be mentioned. I'm only bringing it up because it is an upcoming title, and of course with the movie coming out soon, synergistic timing, maybe if Disney wanted them to show it, they'd show it. But outside of that, their focus is completely on Starfield and selling that to the public right now. They'll save Indiana Jones for maybe next year's, E3/Summer Games Fest/whatever. Once Starfield is out the door, then they'll talk about Indiana Jones. But right now, it's all on Starfield. Okay, we are 47 minutes in, and only now we are finally going to get to the part that you've all been waiting for. Okay, enough with this. Okay, let's just talk about it. I hinted at it like crazy earlier. You all know it exists. If you made it this far into the video, you know exactly what game I'm talking about. This was already going to be in the video, no matter what, even before everything went down. This was already a rumor. I was already going to bring it up. But of course, now that it's official, basically, I have to talk about it. Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5 Tactica. Not Tactics, Tactica. But let's talk about the more obvious one first. So, for those of you that have been living under a rock, not yesterday, but the day before, right after Summer Games Fest ended, Atlas presumably some intern that's running the social media account on Instagram probably thought that, oh wait, the big event finished? Okay, let me put up the new trailers. But they didn't realize that the Xbox event didn't happen that day. The Xbox event's not happening until tomorrow. So they probably switched up the events and screwed things up, and because of that, they put up the complete trailers for both games just on Instagram. Of course, they took it down immediately, but of course, it was too late. Everyone saw it. It's been reposted all over the place. It's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, just search Persona 3 Reload. You'll find the trailer immediately. Yeah. Everyone's already made the joke, but yeah, rip to that Atlas intern that ran the social media account. I hope that they find a job elsewhere, because they clearly are not going to have one after that fiasco. And what's funny is this isn't even the first time this has happened from Atlas. I remember in 2020, right before the Game Awards, the highly anticipated announcement of a Strikers, or at the time, Scramble localization. I was really anticipating. I was like, like every day I would wake up, I'd be like, is it announced? Is it announced? For like 6 months. It was so annoying. And then finally, before the Game Awards, it was leaked. And it was clearly supposed to be a Game Awards reveal, because at the end they had that little stinger where they were like, it's coming to Steam, and it was clearly set up in a way that it was supposed to get a reaction from the audience, like it was at a show, because that's what it was supposed to be. And then it got leaked and screwed up, and it's happened again. I don't know if that was Atlas's fault, or if that was or if that was like the Game Awards' fault, or if that was someone else's fault. I forget who exactly leaked that Strikers reveal trailer for 2020, but either way, it's happened again. Except this time it's for a game that is much bigger than Strikers was. Because we're talking about not just any game, we're talking about the highly anticipated remake that people have been asking for like 5 years. Okay, the only other thing that could have maybe been bigger is obviously Persona 6, but like, that's obviously something that's going to be saved for another showcase, or maybe an Atlas event of some kind down the line, but that's a whole other conversation. But anyways, Persona 3 Reload. There's also that new Persona 5 spin-off. I don't have much to say about it. I mean, the art style is reminiscent of Q, but it's not quite Q, and it's kind of like obviously a side game. I'm not even sure if it's going to really... Like, is that game even going to be canon? I'm not even sure. Because, like, Strikers is canon, right? Strikers is 100% canon. That's very clearly canon. It is literally a direct sequel in every way. This game, and of course the Q games, they're not really well, the Q games are canon, but not canon at the same time, because at the very end, everyone's memory gets erased, so it's basically not canon. Whatever, I'm getting off track. Point is, I'm not sure if this new game is going to count or not. Not that it needs to be canon to matter. I'm just pointing it out, that at least based off of that initial trailer, that very much looks like this has no story impact on anything kind of game. Also, as everyone has famously pointed out, there is no Sumire, there is no Akechi, although Akechi is rumored to be in the game. There is no Sophia, there's no Zenkichi, none of the newer characters are there, and that, I hope they are, because I like to see them get into something, you know? Because there's still people to this day that keep talking about, is Strikers canon because Sumire isn't in it, and That's still a whole conversation, that's a whole story for another day. Point is, Tactica, not the most exciting spin-off in the world, but I'm gonna play it, obviously. It's on Game Pass, too. Both of these games are on Game Pass, by the way, which actually, in a somewhat maybe hot take, I actually kind of wish they weren't. But for a dumb reason. I wish they weren't on Game Pass, because now I don't have to buy them, and I want to buy them. But I can't justify buying them if I could play them for free. That's the problem. I want to buy a physical copy of both those games. But why should I now? It's just throwing money away when I can play it for free, and that annoys me. Yes, seriously, actually. I know it's dumb. Why should I spend $60, maybe even $70, we don't know yet, on Persona 3 Reload when I can just play it for free on Game Pass? Why should I buy a physical copy? There's no point now, and that annoys me. I know that sounds really dumb, but I'm just saying. Look, at Persona 5 Tactica, that game I don't need physically necessarily. But Persona 3 Reload? You bet your ass I'm going to want a physical copy of that. But now why should I buy one? It's just going to be on Game Pass. A spectacularly first world problem, I know. But I'm just saying. But anyways. Persona 3 Reload. I mean, what's there to say that hasn't already been said at this point? Because everyone's pretty much given their piece on it. Okay. I have not played Persona 3. I've played Persona 5 multiple times, both Vanilla and Royal. I have played Persona 4 Golden. But I have not played any version, FES, portable, whatever, Persona 3. We, of course, got the portable port, which was received fairly lackluster reception due to the upscaled background textures and not being FES and stuff. But, overall, it's an okay port, generally speaking, all things considered. But, that came out earlier this year. I deliberately didn't play it because I wanted to play the, quote, real version of the game first, that being FES. And then I'd go back and play portable after that. However, now that we have this remake coming, and coming not that long from now, I mean, it's not coming out tomorrow, but it's coming out early 2024. That's not that far away in the grand scheme of things. It's like, what, 7-8 months? I know there's people out there that are hoping that they're going to do it on March 5th so we can have that sweet symbolism. If you know, you know, but I'm not sure if they're going to do that. They're probably not going to be that blatant. They'll probably just be like February 14th or whatever. Isn't that when Strikers came out? Was like in early February? Maybe somewhere around that time, but anyway. Point is, I am conflicted on whether or not I should even play FES at this point. I mean, of course I'll play it eventually, but now I'm wondering, should I just, now that the remake is basically confirmed and we have a release date, should I even bother playing FES? Should I just wait and play the remake first and then go back and play FES or portable later? I don't know, because, maybe it depends on how different the game is. Because if you were to ask me, should you play Final Fantasy VII before you play the Final Fantasy VII Remake? I'd say yes, not just so you have context and all that stuff, but also because the two games are completely different. And I'm not just talking about the story stuff. I'm not just talking about the changes that they're going to be making. I'm not talking about that. Even just the game outside of the story changes is a completely different game, right? You look at FF7, you look at FF7 Remake and Rebirth, and they're two completely different games, right? Whereas Persona 3 Reload is going to be, as far as we can tell, a one-to-one remake of the original. There's going to be minor changes, I'm sure, but I'm not expecting anything on the level of, like, I actually saw a video earlier today, I think, where I saw someone speculating that, what if Persona 3 Reload gets the FF7 treatment, where it's like a sequel and all this stuff, kind of like what FF7's doing. And of course, we got a new FF7 trailer recently at the Summer Games Fest. That goes even further into all those deviations and stuff and whatnot, but that's a whole other conversation. But I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, I have no evidence for this, but I feel like I'm pretty freaking confident in saying that Persona 3 Reload is going to just be Persona 3 Remake. It's not going to be drastically different. They're not going to make big changes to the story. It's going to just be Persona 3 Remake. Like, that's all I'm expecting it to be. And that's the reason why I'm wondering if it's worth playing the original, because FF7 Original still has immense value, even with Remake existing. Because they're two completely different kinds of games, with two completely different feels and everything like that. But, and of course the gap between the PS1 and the PS4 is gargantuan. It's night and day, right? But PS2 to PS4, PS5, oh, it's better. It looks a lot better. But it's not so much different that I feel like I need to play. But again, I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know enough about the remake yet. But what I will say right now is I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. Once we get more information on the remake, then maybe I'll make my decision. Because I also don't want to play FES and then immediately go into Reload and kind of get like burnout from playing quote unquote the same game back to back. Even if it was like, oh, I play it now and then like 6 months later, it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 right now whether or not I should wait and just play Reload. Because Reload looks really good. I mean, it's running on Unreal Engine, just like SMT5. And, well, I know some people have complained about how it looks a bit too like Persona 5 in terms of the UI, which, honestly, I kind of get. I mean, The UI looks great, especially that menu. That menu with like Makoto and the water background is great, but it's very obvious the Persona 5 influence in the UI. It's still Persona 3. It's not literally Persona 5's UI. It's a Persona 3 UI with the flair of Persona 5. But there are aspects of it that do feel very P5-y. Like, for example, the red. There's more red than you would expect. It's mostly blue, as you'd expect for P3, but there is a decent amount of red in the UI sometimes. And that's kind of off-putting because why is there red in my blue Persona game? It's kind of weird. Like you didn't see blue in you didn't see blue in P4. You didn't see yellow in P5's UI, really. You know, every Persona game well, the modern ones at least, 3, 4, and 5, they all have that color scheme, right? Persona 3, blue. Persona 4, yellow. Persona 5, red. Persona 6, green, white, purple. Who friggin' knows? Well, okay, no, purple's the first game. Whatever, I'm getting off track. Point is, I don't know if I'm gonna wait and play this as my first time playing the game, or if I'm going to play FES first, because that was originally my plan. Because I thought that the remake was further out. Because obviously the remake's been rumored for a while now, and I have been of the opinion that, oh yeah, it's going to happen eventually. This is way too requested to not happen. Like with FF7, right? We were going to get an FF7 remake no matter what. It's way too popular to not get a remake. Same with Persona 3, obviously to a lesser extent. It's not as big as FF7. Do you get what I'm saying, right? Like, what's the #1 remake people have been talking about? I mean, I've seen a good amount of people talk about Persona 2 getting a remake. But Persona 3 has always been, like, the #1. Like, that's been the one. Persona 3 remake. In fact, I remember a lot of people saying, oh, the reason they ported Persona 3 Portable and not FES is because they have the remake coming. Well, congratulations. You were right. Also, speaking of portable, and this is, of course, this is probably going to be the most contentious part of the remake. Well, I have seen some people talk about, the UI is too much like P5. Most of the people talking, at least from what I've seen, have obviously been pretty happy with what we've seen so far, because it's basically what people asked for. Because what was what people were asking for? I want Persona 3, but in the Persona 5 engine. It's not the Persona 5 engine, it's Unreal Engine, like SMT5, and it has that Unreal Engine look to it, for sure. It looks like it does have that same kind of look as SMT5. Obviously, they're two completely different games, but you know what I mean? Like I haven't played that much of SMT5, I still haven't gotten around to like playing it that much, but it has like that look, if you get what I mean. It has that Unreal Engine look to it, so that'll definitely be interesting to see. So I think that also basically confirms that Persona 6, whenever that comes out, that'll also be on Unreal Engine. I think that they're probably going to be ditching their existing engines permanently, and everything this going forward at Atlas is going to be Unreal Engine. SMT5 was Unreal Engine, Persona 3 is going to be Unreal Engine, Persona 6 is going to be Unreal Engine most likely. Kind of in line with what we've been seeing a lot from a lot of developers recently, where a lot of them have been ditching their own in-house tools in favor of Unreal Engine, which has been, controversial, I'd say, especially with all the issues regarding, like, what it means for the, industry, with, Epic having so much leverage or whatever, and also, like, how many of the games will feel a bit too samey, because I will admit, well, Unreal Engine is, of course, a great engine. Even if in games that have drastically different art styles, you can still feel that Unreal Engine-ness in it. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the kind of thing if you've seen enough Unreal Engine games, there's just aspects of it that are like, oh yeah, that's Unreal Engine. You can just immediately tell when a game is running on Unreal Engine, no matter what the art style. It's just a really apparent thing. Like, even if they didn't flash that Unreal Engine logo at the beginning of the trailer for Persona 3, I would be able to tell it's Unreal Engine just by looking at it. I can just tell, especially when we had SMT5 already as kind of a comparison point. It'd just be really obvious. There is a part of me that is a little concerned with Unreal Engine, only if for that, of course, the shader compilation issues that we've been experiencing lately with PC ports, because, that's another thing too. So not only do I now have, quote, no incentive to buy a physical PS5 version. Oh yeah, let's get this crystal clear, by the way. I think everyone knows this, but just to make it 1000% clear, this is not a Xbox exclusive. Let's make that crystal freaking clear. The only reason that there is no mention of PlayStation or Steam or anything is because this is an Xbox trailer from the Xbox Showcase. Just like the Persona ports. Remember last year when people were like, are these ports coming to PS4? Are they coming to PS4? Are they coming to Switch? And then we got confirmation later on. Yes, they're coming to PS4. Yes, they're coming to Switch. In that partner showcase a bit later on. And we got confirmation. So that's going to be the same case here. They're going to be announced as Xbox and PC. Or Xbox in the Microsoft Store. And then they're going to announce either a bit later or way later, yes, they're coming to PlayStation, they're coming to Steam, and will it come to the Switch? Well, it is, well, we have SMT5 on the Switch, so it's possible. And obviously, now that all the other Persona games are on the Switch, there's going to be even more demand for it. But honestly, especially because it's coming out early 2024, I would not be surprised if Atlas doesn't put it on the Switch, but makes it like a launch title for the Switch 2. Because the Switch 2 might be coming out in early 2024, similar to how the original Switch came out in early 2017. But that's a completely other conversation. But at the very least, yes, it will come to Steam, and yes, it will come to PS4 and PS5. And I say PS4 and PS5 because in the trailer it says Xbox One. So if it's coming to the Xbox One, it's gonna come to the PS4. So it's not gonna be next gen / current gen only. Which a part of me is a little surprised by. I kind of figured that maybe it would, but that's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. But anyways, yes, it will come to PlayStation. Yes, it will come to Steam. Do not worry about that. It's just an Xbox-specific trailer because it was supposed to be a reveal at the Xbox event. It will come to other platforms just like the ports from last year did. Do not worry. But anyway, so I've been talking about this long enough. I'm mainly focusing on the whole, like, will I even play the original first thing? Because that's the main thing I really want to talk about. It's just kind of like, because I don't have too much to say about the actual footage itself other than it looks good. In terms of the only real complaint I have with it, aside from maybe a little, even though I think it looks great for the most part, I do agree at least a little bit with the whole. It looks a bit too much like P5 in terms of the UI, even though I think the UI overall looks pretty good. But probably my biggest complaint with that trailer is Junpei's sprite, or portrait, I should say, looks a little funky. It doesn't look quite right, but everyone else's looks good. Like, Toriumi looks good, Yukari looks good, Makoto, of course, looks like all the other portraits they showed look good. But Junpei's did look a little weird. Oh, and this probably goes without saying, but I know people have been talking about it. What's going to happen with Junpei's voice? Because, of course, Junpei, for those of you who don't know, Junpei's voice actor up until this point has been Vic. Why am I struggling to pronounce his last name? I don't know. Well, we'll just say Vic. You know who he is, Broly and various other things. Also, famously got embroiled in controversy a few years ago. I'm not going to even attempt to touch that. I got no stake in that whole debate over, whether he was in the right or wrong. I have no stake in that whatsoever. I'm not even going to touch it. However, I will say, because of all that controversy from a few years ago, I think he is going to be replaced with someone else. I don't know who, but I think Vic is going to get replaced, for better or worse. Again, I don't really have a dog in that whole debate. I'm just saying, I think he is going to get replaced. Hopefully whoever they choose does a good job, but we'll see. But I think everyone else that's like everyone that was at least in the dancing game from 2018, they'll probably all come back. I think most of the original voice actors still voice the characters. It's just Vic. That's gonna be like a bit of a we'll see what happens with that, because again of all the controversy from a few years ago. And then I believe Fuka's original English voice did not come back for any of the spin-offs, but again, I'm not super well versed in that kind of specific stuff all that much, but I'd imagine most people that have been coming back for the spin-offs and stuff like that will come back again. It just kind of goes without saying, I feel like, at this point. But yeah, but overall, it looks good. Maybe a little too much like P5 in terms of the UI, but overall it looks pretty good. Obviously, I'm looking forward to it. It's really funny. We have 2 highly anticipated remakes coming out at the same time. We have part 2 of FF7 Rebirth, which is coming out in early 2024, and famously is going to be 2 discs. So that's cool. So, up to 200 gigs potentially, but we'll see how that goes, because it's 100 gigs per disc. For those of you who don't know, the PS5 uses 100 gig Blu-rays, but anyway. And we got now Persona 3 Reload coming out at the same time, early 2024. 2 highly anticipated remakes. Granted, Rebirth is part 2 of a remake that's also a sequel, but whole other conversation. But yeah, so yeah, Persona 3 Reload and to some extent Persona 5 Tactica. These would have been by far the highlights, similar to how the ports last year were the highlights for me as well. But now that they've been ruined, I wonder if they're going to acknowledge it, because I know sometimes at events they'll acknowledge when stuff is like a rumor and it gets, for example, at the Summer Games Fest, when Jeff, before showing Rebirth, was like, the rumors are true. And I know a lot of people are like confused when he said that, even though it made perfect sense what he meant by that, because like it was rumored that FF7 would be at the showcase. So those are the rumors he was acknowledging. The rumors were true, whatever. But it'd be kind of funny if like when Phil comes on stage to be like, our partners at Atlas, he does like a little like that you are, to reveal some games that you probably have heard of by now, or something like that. That'd be kind of cool, but they're probably just going to play it cool and pretend that we don't already know, even though we already know. Again, rip to that guy at Atlas that most certainly has been fired from this whole mess. But anyways, yeah, Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Tactica coming out in... Oh yeah, Persona 5 Tactica, by the way, is coming out in November. And both games are coming out on Game Pass, coming out on, Series X, S, Xbox One, PC, and again, we're gonna get Steam and PlayStation and maybe even Switch announcements later on. Don't worry, it's gonna come. It's not timed exclusive, it's not exclusive, it's not any of that. It's gonna be same day, just like the ports. Chill out, don't worry, it's just a marketing deal because Microsoft gave them money. So the most like basic statement ever. Microsoft gave them money. Whatever, you get the idea. It's a marketing thing. But the game will still come out the same day as everything else, just like the ports did. Don't worry. And speaking of something that's a bit related, so of course the Persona 3 remake was our first real look at it was that leak from a few months ago of that one, clip from like Yukari or whatever. And in that clip, we also had like some early Sonic Frontiers gameplay and also Jet Set Radio, new Jet Set Radio. You know what? Considering Sega's relationship with Xbox right now, with their games being on Game Pass, and of course the Atlas titles and all that stuff, and including the fact that we're going to get Persona 3 and 5 Tactica here, I wouldn't be surprised if we also got the official announcement of that new Jet Set Radio. I don't know if that's a rumor necessarily, but that would make all the sense in the world. I mean, it just makes sense. Like, yeah, that totally would make sense for it to be there. Plus, Microsoft has a history of Jet Set Radio. For example, Jet Set Radio Future was an Xbox exclusive way back in the day, like the original Xbox. Obviously, that was like 20 years ago, but I'm just saying. But yeah, so Jet Set Radio, I can see that being here. I'd give that like at least a 50%, if not higher. Like that's like that makes sense to be here, especially when they have the Persona stuff on the way. And of course, they've just been having all the deal. Sega's been pretty cozy with Microsoft in the last few years, just in general. And last but not least, the Starfield Direct. I don't have much to say about it. Starfield's not a game I'm personally looking forward to, but as I've said probably 1,000 times at this point, it is Microsoft and Bethesda's big tentpole title for the year. The big one people are hoping it will deliver. Todd Howard, I'm sure, will be... we don't know if Todd Howard's actually going to be there, but I'm sure he will because, come on, it's Todd Howard. He's there for all the Bethesda, all the big Bethesda stuff. But, yeah, so Starfield's going to be getting its own Direct right after the Xbox Game Showcase, which, by the way, I think is the first time I've seen Microsoft officially use the term Direct in the manner it was originally made for. Yes, they had that developer Direct a few months back in like May or whatever. Or no, not May. January. January, I believe, is when it happened. That's when they announced Hi-Fi Rush, by the way. But this is the first time they've used it in the traditional sense, where they're like attaching a specific like game or whatever to it. Like, I mean, granted, they don't have Xbox Direct, but like Starfield Direct is the closest thing they've used to like its original name. I know some people have been like kind of memeing on the whole like, oh, they're just copying the Direct, but like honestly, like I don't have a problem with it. I mean, State of Play is literally just a carbon copy. Well, it's a bit different now, but when it first started, it was literally a carbon copy on Nintendo Direct, and I didn't have a problem with it. Everyone was memeing on it, but like I didn't really care. Like, you know the term that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. The Nintendo Direct worked. That's why everyone's copying it. That's why everyone calls their thing Direct now, or something along those lines, and it's basically the same format. So I don't have a problem with it. But anyways, I don't know. Like, sure, like why not? You want to have State of Play, which is basically PlayStation Direct. Sure, you want to have Developer Direct. Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, like who cares? Like, what's the problem with it? I don't know. I think it's fine. But anyways, yeah, so we're going to have a Starfield Direct right after. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we're going to obviously see, it's going to be our most extensive look at the game yet. I'm sure we're going to have Todd Howard there in all of his glory, talking about the game, showing it off. One thing I would like to see confirmed, I don't think it's confirmed yet, I could be wrong, is a 60 FPS mode. Again, especially after the whole Redfall debacle. If they could confirm a 60 FPS mode for launch, specifically, that would be a big deal, but we'll see. I don't think that's confirmed yet. I think it's just 30 FPS at the moment. I think that would be a big one to confirm. Also, something that was leaked a little beforehand, we're going to get a new controller that's Starfield themed, maybe even a Starfield console. We have not, okay, this is a bit off topic. We have not had enough limited edition consoles from either Sony or Microsoft this generation. Heck, even Nintendo. We barely get limited edition consoles. Nintendo's been a bit better about it, but in general, it feels like we do not get as many special edition consoles as we used to. Like, I remember like 10 or 15 years ago, there'd be like a special edition consoles all over the place, and now it's like we get one a year if we're lucky. Like, the only one we've gotten from Microsoft this generation was the Halo one. We got the Halo console, and that was it. I don't think Sony has done a single like limited edition console yet. Not that I can think of. I could be wrong. We might have gotten like one. Was there one for God of War Ragnarok? I don't remember if there was. But it feels like we have barely gotten any limited edition consoles. And I don't know why we haven't. We just haven't. Maybe because they didn't have stock the longest time, but now they do. So like, I don't know. And even for Nintendo, I mean, yeah, we got like the Tears of the Kingdom Switch and the Splatoon 3 Switch and Scarlet and Violet Switch. There's a couple of them, but like in general, it just feels like we don't get as many as we used to. I don't know. Like compared to like the 3DS. Like the 3DS and the DS got tons of limited editions. The Switch, by comparison, feels like we've gotten like 3 or 4. I know it's more than that, but it feels like we haven't gotten nearly as much. But anyway, that's a whole other complaint. But just in general, I feel like all of the big three have not done enough limited edition consoles, and if there's a game that deserves a limited edition console, I think Starfield deserves one. And when I say a limited edition console, I'm not talking about a bundle like what they did with Diablo. No. I mean like a limited edition console, like we would expect, like what Halo did. Halo Infinite had that cool limited edition console. Like, do that, but for Starfield. You got the controller. Go ahead and do a console while you're at it. It's your big game of the year. Make a special, cool-looking console for it. And not just a D-brand skin, like that Porsche thing that was announced at the Summer Games Fest. It's basically a glorified D-brand skin. Those don't count, by the way, before anyone says, but what about the skins that they do on Twitch? No. Those don't count. A limited edition console, to me, is a proper, from the manufacturer, custom, like a proper limited edition console. That is a limited edition console, not a glorified D-brand skin. That's a completely different conversation, I'm aware, but I'm just making that clear. But anyway. Anyways. Another thing that is, of course, probably going to happen, because we have a release date for Starfield already. I believe Starfield is coming out, I believe, in September. I don't think it's going to get delayed again. I think it's pretty obvious it's not going to get delayed at this point. The game's going to come out in September, for better or worse. We'll see how it launches, of course, but a lot of people are pessimistic on how it's gonna launch because it's a Bethesda game, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, so 60 FPS mode, new controller. We're gonna get the pre-order. If the pre-orders aren't live already, they're gonna go live then. We're gonna get collector. I believe a collector's edition has already been leaked. So all the usual stuff you'd probably expect. And that's kind of all I have to say in regards to Starfield. And with that, I believe we are done. Oh boy, that went on a lot longer than I thought it was going to. We are at 1 hour and 19 minutes. Holy Jesus, I think that is the longest discussion I have done in a hot minute. I did not plan it to be that long. I thought this would be like maybe 30 minutes. I was planning for it to be like 30 minutes at least, like 30 minutes at most, but clearly we blew way past that mark. But anyways, so yeah, so that's what I got to say in regards to the Xbox presentation. Overall, definitely a presentation I'm looking forward to, even though the biggest thing I wanted to see from it has already been leaked and therefore kind of already ruined, but it'll still be cool to see it officially announced, and maybe we'll get a 4K trailer after the fact and all that stuff. And of course, there's tons of other stuff they could show that'd be cool too. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what we get from it, and I'm sure you guys all are too. So yeah, so let me know down below. What do you guys want to see from the Microsoft event tomorrow? What do you think is going to be there? What do you think is not going to be there? Whatever you got to say in regards to the event, by all means, let me know down below. I'd like to see it. And yeah, that's going to be basically it from me. So stay tuned tomorrow. I will be streaming it. Most likely, I only say that because there is a small chance, if I screw up, that I will not be streaming it if my sleep schedule decides to backfire on me. But I'm going to try and make sure I am up early enough to stream this, because of course, like all the Xbox E3-ish events, they're at like 10 a.m. They start at 10 a.m. Like how Nintendo, Nintendo's E3 directs are always at 9 a.m. So I'm gonna have to I'll probably have to wake up at like 9. Yeah, right now I'm not really wired to wake up at 9. I wake up like way later, but we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work. So yeah, stay tuned tomorrow. I will most likely be streaming that. And with that being said, that's pretty much it. So yeah, with that being said, this is Logan59XP, and I'll see you guys next time.